Monique Fuller here this morning. Hi, Monique. Oh, Monique is far from the mic, so I'm in the chair today. And today, I'm going to be speaking with a couple of people here about the new scramble for Africa, as private and state companies grab unprecedented expanses of land from small landholders, farmers, in the expectation that world food and commodity prices will increase. Political leaders of many African countries, in partnership with foreign investors and national elites, are grabbing prime agricultural land along with rights to extract oil, gas, mineral reserves, and unlimited use of water. African farmers and pastoralists are being displaced from their land and livelihoods. So I'm going to be speaking this morning with Obang Metho and Dr. Samuel Bonti-Ankomah, members of an organization, International Coalition, acronym CELADA, brand new, coalition promoting equitable land acquisition and agricultural development for the African people. Dr. Ankomah's PhD thesis was on land use policies. He worked 5 years in South Africa, undertaking research, analysis on land distribution, food security, and poverty. He's currently working, managing a team of economic policy researchers with Agriculture Canada, lectures at Carleton University. Obang Metho is a human rights activist from Ethiopia who has advocated for human rights, peace, and political accountability in Africa for over 10 years. As an advocate, he has briefed and met with officials at the UN, European Parliament, and World Bank. So welcome this morning to both of you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ankomah and Obang, hello.
I am here, thank you.
Oh, you're good and clear. Okay, that's great. So we'll get right into it here. Can you give me, I don't know, you can take turns or just chime in when you've got something to add when one of the others talking. Can you give me some background on why the problem of why you're calling it land grabs, what that signifies, and why it's so serious? Do you want to, Sam, maybe you can begin? Or?
Yeah, basically land grab in Africa is increasing over time, particularly when the biofuel era began. And the whole idea is basically you have in small rural communities, land is their mainstay. Right? And therefore having access to land makes it very important for their sustainable livelihoods. Without the land, it's going to be very difficult for them to sustain themselves. Now with big investors coming in to take away the land, these individuals may not have the access to that piece of land, and that will cut off their livelihoods. And that is very critical for many rural areas where there's no employment. And therefore, without the land, they will not be able to sustain themselves in that particular environment. And that is why we consider this a very critical and important issue.
Yeah. And the people, Obang, maybe I'll ask you this. What kind of people? Is it all farmers, small farmers? What's their land tenure like? Does it vary a lot in different countries?
Yeah, thank you, Gord. Yes, it depends from a country to a country. And, this land grab, when we talk about it, is more serious than just a land grab. Usually I call it a life grab. When you take away the land from these peoples, you almost take away their livelihood and their futures. Pretty much you rob them of their dignity for that matter. Because most of these people in Africa, these are people who feed their family not from the income from the office. They feed their family from the land. And when the land is taken away from them, then pretty much that really, they become almost homeless, or they go to the city where their livelihood is different. And so what we call it, this land deal that's been going on, the problem is there's no land tenure. Most of the countries, the government control the land, own the land. And so pretty much the government can come whichever they find the most fertile land where there's lots of access to waters. Those local people who are there, they've been seen as a problem. So the way for them is to kind of get rid of them so that this land can be given to the investors. Going back to what my colleagues say before, these land grabs, they really started right after 2008 when there were a food shortage in lots of the places throughout the world that were the full right. In that time, I think most of the investors seen the land as a very good thing to invest on. And so they were looking for somewhere where they can find a fertile land. And if you look into this world the way we live today, the place where there's more untapped resource or untapped land is the continent of Africa. So some of these people, equity fund and some of the bigger groups, they've seen Africa has that. And you find a place like Saudi Arabia where they have lots of money, but they don't have the land to feed their people. You have the Asian country where the population are increasing. They don't have enough land to feed their people. So what do? Is to go to a third world country. And when they go there, they make the deal with the government, not with the people. And these governments are most of the time are not elected by their own people. So these people, they make the deal when the people themselves, the indigenous or the local people, are not included in part of the decision. So there's no accountability, there's no transparency whatsoever.
Yeah. So maybe make it a little clear for us about the status of the land for the people who are on the land. What's their, we would call it title here, is there, or in communal ownership or traditional holding, or what's the relationship? You say government, it varies country to country, but maybe Sam, in countries you're familiar with, for example, what?
Yeah, basically in Ghana, it's a communal land ownership system. The chiefs have ownership and distribute to their people. Right?
Okay.
And normally, when it's communal land ownership system, individuals do not have private ownership. The chief can take away the land anytime they want to. Right? And therefore, when a big investor comes in, the chief may decide to sell or allocate the land to these individuals without even communicating with the land owners, people who are using the land. So there are several cases where the farmers will go to the land the next day and it's not there. Somebody else is using the land because it's been sold by the chief. And therefore, that kind of communication doesn't exist when the land is transferred to somebody else. And that is in Ghana. And in South Africa, it's a little different, where it's a private ownership. And individuals may have to buy the land in order to use that. And when Nelson Mandela came out of prison, he tried to reallocate land using a whole bunch of policies. And one of them was to buy land, acquire the land, and give it to the individuals. Right? And so it's different from country to country.
Right.
But in many African countries, it's communally owned, which makes it difficult for individuals to have any say on how the land is distributed.
Right. And in Ethiopia, Obang, you say the government owns the land? Is there any communal ownership or occupation?
It's not at all. In Ethiopia, the government pretty much that they're in control of the land, and this is not even, we are not talking about the local people who are in the farm. Even that's what we call urban city land grabbing. In that meaning that the Ethiopian government passed a law that even the land where your house is, only the home, your house, and the material, the cement, and the roof belong to you, but the land there where your home is doesn't belong to you, belong to the government. So pretty much there's no really communal like in Ghana or other places. So, and as I was saying earlier, we live in a country in Ethiopia where there's no opposition. There's only one opposition in the parliament. Out of 547, there's only one opposition, and that opposition is being given 3 minutes to debate. So most of these, even if there's someone want to take it to the government and say that, let's debate about this, why the local people are not speaking. The local people have no voice, and the government also that passed a law which is making that it is against the law to promote child right, woman right, disabled reconciliation. So when you see all of this, it makes it almost impossible because the government control the land, the government control the life of the people, and so if you are on your own, and so usually I use this very much as say that the decision that the government made today in Africa of a land grab, I think from 2008 until 2010, almost 136 million acres of land has been leased in the continent of Africa, and most of these are because of the government, because it's the regime that which are not elected by the people who are aligned with these investors, who are aligned with these foreigner company, and their own local people have no voice. So even when the local people want to go and say that, look, this is the land where we grew up, our parents are being buried in this place, should we have some kind of entitlement? So usually the government really doesn't listen to them. They are more intent to listen to the people who are bringing the money in rather than their fellow citizens.
So who, the investors you say are foreign usually?
Majority of them are foreigners, and then also that, as you could tell, that because the land has become as income generating. Like when you look at for example, the capital city of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, almost any plot of land has now been seen as a commodity. So anything that even there's no, sometimes it's funny. We live in Canada where there's almost every few blocks there's a park where kids can play in, but in Ethiopia almost that none exists because the land has been seen as a way to invest in it. So usually the foreigners are the ones who are coming to invest, but also the local, that people who are allied to the government or the ethnic groups that are really controlling the government. So pretty much the government crony or the government elite, they are entitled to go. Like if you have a very fertile land and nice place, I can go and talk to the government and say that, look, you know what, I want to get this land from Gord. And then the government will tell Gord that, this is not your land, and then tomorrow will be my land. So there's no rule of law, there's no accountability, there's no transparency. But the biggest picture is the government himself. And that's why we say that CELADA, when we did CELADA, we are not against investment. We are not against, really, but having it in a very good way, an equitable way, where, win-win situation. And also why we do it in Canada, it's not only, we have like, my colleagues from Ghana, from Ethiopia, from other places, even we have some Canadian. And the idea was to let people not have that these are a whole bunch of Africans saying that they're opposed. We don't oppose blindly. And also that not to let, there are other people who say sometimes, well, you have these Western white people going to Africa and change Africa. No, CELADA is made up of many Canadian, African, and also that Canadian themselves, original Canadian. And so the idea is to try to say that, look, is there any way to make it a win-win where these local people can benefit instead of being deprived from their land?
And now while you mentioned CELADA, can you tell us what's the acronym stand for?
So the acronym, it stands for, actually, what we did was, the idea was, we thought that, what can we do if we have to really come up with a real simple way that to make people look that we are not against the land grab, because there are some people who are saying that, right now, the African or people who are fighting a land grab, it is a blind. For us, we are not blinding against the land grab. We thought that there's a way to have it both ways, not only telling the local people or telling the ambassador that you don't come to Africa. The land in Africa is not for outsiders. So we are not into blindfolded telling the people that we don't need the land. But what we had decided to do is to come up with an idea where the local who are coming to invest in Africa or people who are coming to invest in Africa look into a way that, look, the African also will lack these investment to come. The African will lack the investor to come to Africa, but it should be a win-win. It should be, for the people again, where almost everybody who are, the stakeholders as well as the people in Africa benefit. So that was the idea that where we really, what we come up was, this is something that we can do. This is something that we, as the Canadian, and so pretty much was a coalition for equitable acronym, for equitable acquisition and land development in Africa. So as I was saying, we are not against, land, plan, or we are hoping that this would be something that even some of the foreigners, like a Canadian or American, are also that wanting to go to that place. And we don't want them to look at us as a group of people who don't want, the land acquisition. Even in Canada, we still deal with that today, but we have to be in just a way that, it benefits almost both, win-win in a way.
Yeah. Okay, I want to get back to the solution question, but I want to back up a bit for a minute, Sam. And can I ask you a bit more about the investors or the purposes of the land? Why are people interested? What do they do? Do they use the land or just sit on it? Is it speculative? What kind of land use is it? Yeah. So I guess it's all kinds of things. But.
There are all kinds of things, basically, but basically more to do with investments, and particularly in northern Ghana in 2009, a company called Biofuel Africa purchased about 24,000 hectares of land in northern Ghana to grow what we call jatropha, a biofuel input, right?
Biofuel, yeah.
And basically that displaced about 7 farming villages who had no alternative to go anywhere. And as I said earlier, these people are not told even when this happens. They are not part of the discussion, the debate, and they just lose the land because of the nature of land ownership. So most of it is investment. And the reason why this happened in Ghana was when they had the new energy policies promoting biofuel production. Right? And as a result, when you want to produce biofuel, the truth, you need a bigger piece of land. And 10 hectares will not do it. And so they tend to get these bigger plots of land in order to grow these commodities. And basically, most of them are investors. And with the help of chiefs and government officials, that becomes possible.
And the farmers, the villages, you say they end up in the cities? What were they farming? Where were they producing before? What kinds of things? Local?
They produce all kinds of local commodities like maize, rice, which is staple commodity. And no matter what these rural communities do, they are small-scale farmers. They produce this to feed their households, and then the rest can be sold for income. And therefore, when this land is not available to produce the maize or rice, which is a staple commodity, their households are going to go hungry.
Yeah.
And as a result, if you don't have any alternative and there are no jobs in that location, these individuals will have to move to the urban area, the cities, clog the cities.
Right.
And where they also have no opportunities for jobs because they don't have the educational level that will give them the opportunity to actually get jobs in the cities.
Yeah, and an income, livelihood.
Livelihoods are no more there. Right?
Yeah.
So there's no alternative for them to basically feed their families, and that becomes a big challenge.
And you mentioned biofuel as an example. It's an export crop.
It's an export.
Whereas they were growing domestic livelihood.
Exactly, right?
You know.
The export crop biofuel, which doesn't actually feed the rural community, right?
Mm-hmm. So you're turning land that was in food production
into a cash crop.
A cash crop for export.
For export, yeah.
Right. What about non-agricultural uses? Does that happen some places too? Or?
Well, in some other places we have mining as one of the key areas which land could be sold or taken away for. And I know particularly in some parts of Ghana where mining areas where individuals can actually, the government has given individual rural areas opportunity to actually mine their, use a piece of land for mining themselves. What we see now is Chinese companies coming in with big investments and also taking away this land to do the mining that the rural community could have actually done for their own livelihood.
They were mining themselves, artisanal.
Like open pits that were actually not being used by the mining companies.
Yeah.
These rural communities can actually occupy those areas and start mining their own way, even though it can be dangerous. The government sometimes allows this to happen because this provides livelihoods. And then when the Chinese investors came in, they basically took over this particular opportunity as well.
Yeah.
Leaving the local community stranded without that opportunity.
Now, can you tell me, either of you, or both of you, what kind of numbers of displaced people are we talking about? How serious, how extensive is it? Maybe Obang to start?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. For instance, the Human Rights Watch wrote a report, almost over 2 years ago now, less than 2 years ago. And then they did that in Ethiopia, where they were saying that the Ethiopian government in particular, in the southwest of Ethiopia, in the Gambela region, they displaced 78,000 people. And the government also were thinking of displacing what they call biologization, to displace, to take Ethiopians who live in some of these places and say that they will give them services once they move them in a different place. So there was a plan that of Ethiopian government from 2011 until 2017 to displace over 2 million people throughout the country. And what we have seen was that most of these people who are being displaced are the people under the quote-unquote the villagization program, meaning that these indigenous or these local people will be giving services once they go to that access to clean water, education, and all of this. But what the report finding was that most of these people who are being displaced are people who used to live in a more fertile area. So so we are talking about a huge number, and also that this is something, by the way, not only the government, even the World Bank was involved in this as well. The World Bank gave money to Ethiopia, and then the Ethiopian government used that money to force the people and evict the people, where some of those people who were just put in jail and killed and tortured. And then also, as we were saying earlier, when you say that this land deal, it is affecting people. Like, for instance, we know Ethiopia as a country being known for food hate and starving. But but it's not because they don't have a land. They have the most fertile land. But these governments, instead of using that land to feed their own people, they are giving it to foreigners so that the foreigners can be able to sustain them and protect them, which is the interest of the government, not the interest of the people. So we are dealing with a huge crisis going on in the continent. And so most of the people who use this land, who used to have the land and grow food to feed their family, now they are sitting under a tree waiting for a food aid from USAID or from World Food Program, and it's in the name of development in a way. So it is one of those, is a backward process where I remember one time Ethiopian government official were asking, he said that, well, we can displace them once we move them, and then the company, have a farm, they can work, once they work, then they can go and buy the food for themselves. So it's just a very, really, logically it doesn't make any sense.
So
but
why is
we're talking about 1,000 of people, even in a million in number throughout the continent.
Just have to wrap up now. I just want to ask both of you, finally, I mean, it's surprising, you, at Obang, you've spoken to officials in the U.S. and World Bank and so on. What's their argument for support? You say the bank has been supporting some of this going on. How do they do it? Why do they do it?
Exactly, and I think some of the things sometimes I see that, the bank and some of these group even, that's why when we created CELADA, to made it that we have lots of, Canadian taxpayer was being giving to some country, and that country used that money to evict the people, to make the people not be self-reliant. So, one of the reasons why CELADA was, formed was to create an awareness among our Canadian, among the decision or policy makers to say that, look, this is wrong. It is really, if we cannot allow an Indian man to come to Saskatchewan and take 3,000 acre of land, 300,000 acre of land for 99 cents for 99 years, if it is wrong in Saskatchewan, it should be wrong in Ethiopia, it should be wrong in Ghana, in other places. Not only that, these policy makers in the USA or CEDA, for instance, who are giving money to this country should be very careful in who they give their money to. And that's what we were saying, that, one way or another, these people are taking the vulnerable. And I call it, this is a daylight robbery, not really helping the people, it's hurting the people. So when we talk to the U.S. policymakers, the World Bank, the European Union, what we are telling them is that, really you cannot, overlook this. This is just a serious thing. It is affecting the people. It is not land grab. It is life grab. It's future grab. It's robbing the future of these peoples. And then the taxpayer should be going to a place that we're benefiting the people, not hurting the people.
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time here. I just want to say to Sam, where can people go and learn more and read more, get background on the issues involved here?
Yeah, basically, CELADA has a website called http://celada.ca.
How do you spell CELADA?
CELADA.
Okay.
.ca.
That's it. Okay.
And if anybody needs more information, they can send us email at info@celada.ca.
Yeah. And that's on the website too. You have links to different articles, yes, or organizations,
different conferences, different seminars.
Yeah.
And so people, when they go to the website, they can be able to get access to that information.
I see Oxfam is associated. They've got a campaign on this too, haven't they? Yeah. So you can get links through the website.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thanks both of you, Obang and Sam Bonti-Ankomah. Obang Metho, thanks for being with us today and enlightening us to a brand new, well, not a brand new issue, but maybe new to Canadians. It's emerging though, and so pay attention.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you again.
Bye.
Well, that's it for Luta Continua today. Gord Walker is signing off, and we'll be with you again next Friday.